Hi, this is Michael Monahan, a.k.a. Dr. Goulfinger, and you're listening to The Graveyard Show.
Welcome to the Graveyard.
And you are listening to the Graveyard Show podcast, the Tombstone edition. I am your caretaker, and the graveyard is open. Well, hello and welcome back, everyone. It's been a while since my last upload. Just enjoying the summer here. And the beauty about not having to be on a scheduled podcast, such as a first-run podcast, the best part about it is that, well, I can just upload shows as I am ready to. So it has been a while, and I've been enjoying summer, and I thought, well, it's been too long, so time to get these shows back up and running for your listening pleasure. What's shocking to me is that if I were still doing this show from 2009, this would be my 11th year of podcasting. And I don't think I ever would have made it this far doing a first-run podcast. Certainly not on the schedule that I was having. But anyway, enough about that. Let's get back to the topic that I've been discussing these last couple of shows, which is horror hosts. And, well, you heard his name mentioned quite a bit over the last few shows, so I thought it was finally time to bring him inside the graveyard. Michael Monahan, who you heard at the top of the show, a.k.a. Dr. Goulfinger. He'll be here in just a moment. He is considered the leading authority on horror hosts, and in a minute, you will find out why that is. Well, there's a lot to hear, so I don't want to waste any time. Let's head inside to my caretaker quarters, and I'll fire up the tube TV for us. I would say warm yourself by the fire. I know many of you have been dying out there in this summer heat. A lot of heat wave going on, but here in the graveyard, it does get cool. So if you'd like to warm yourself by the fireplace, it's there. Or if you want to pop some popcorn, you can use the fireplace as well. We have some kernels over there that are ready for popping. And if you do make some, make sure you make plenty for everyone. Very quickly, I wanted to mention that Michael actually appeared on the program 3 times. So this interview you're about to hear was originally released as a 2-part show, but I thought it would work better edited together as one show, which you'll hear now. So don't worry, when the first interview ends and the second interview is going to begin, I will make sure to change the channel. So don't worry, just sit back and relax. Stick around. After the interview, we'll talk a little horror, including Joe Bob Briggs and Shudder, some Peter Jackson and Godzilla home video news, and what is going on with the Friday the 13th film series. Okay, sit back, relax, and we will go back in time to May 14th and May 21st, 2009. Graveyard Show podcasts 22 and 23. As I turn on my state-of-the-art tube TV, let me just adjust the rabbit ears here, and I think I'm finding where we need to go.
And as you can hear in the background, a new grave is being dug. Well, maybe it should be 2, because is it for Michael Monahan? Or is it for Dr. Goulfinger? Or is it for Dr. Goulfinger or Michael Monahan? Let's find out, shall we? Michael Monahan, a.k.a. Dr. Goulfinger. It's time to talk horror hosts.
Michael Monahan is one of the country's leading authorities on television horror hosts. So much so, he was tapped by filmmakers Sandy Clark and John Hudgens to contribute to their documentary about horror hosts called American Scary. Michael's alter ego is also known as Dr. Goulfinger, or is it the other way around? Well, we're about to find out who Michael is as he joins me in the graveyard. Michael, thanks for being here.
Hey, greetings, caretaker. Good to see you.
So, of course, I was tempted to say, "What's up, Doc?" but I'll let that one go.
Bless you.
Now, you are one of the country's leading experts on television horror hosts.
You also have a gigantic collection of horror host props, memorabilia, stuff like that. So why don't we just get to the beginning? What got you interested in horror?
Well, this goes way back to childhood. I grew up here in the San Francisco Bay Area in Northern California. Back at that time where you had 3 major networks, a local station, and it was even pre-UHF at that point, early 60s. And every once in a while, a horror or science fiction film would turn up on one of these stations, and they always grabbed me as a kid in a big way. In fact, the first nightmare I ever have, at least on record, was following a screening of Bride of the Monster, the old Ed Wood movie.
Okay.
And I woke up in the middle of the night yelling. I guess I must have been about 4 or 5 years old, and had the classic confrontation with my mother at that point. Came up, stormed in the room, and said, "That's it. No more horror movies for you." Which, of course, only deepened their appeal. Then eventually, I guess it was around 1969, the big event took place. My mother was buying a new television, which had a UHF channel on it. And we were so excited because, oh my gosh, it's more than the 4 stations that we now get. And my brothers and I, as soon as she brought it home, we're flicking through those UHF stations. And it's just like click, snow, click, snow, click, snow. And we're just about to give up. We think, God, UHF sucks. And suddenly we went click, and we hit Chemo Channel 20. And there was a big silver guy fighting a big rubber monster. And we just stopped and went, oh my God, what's this? Well, it turned out it was Ultraman. And we were just, oh, well, UHF is God, at that point. And so later that same night, we were just saying, well, look, if they've got cool stuff like that on in the afternoon, we've got to see what they have on at night. And my mom okayed it. She was indulging us and let us watch what we wanted that evening. And it became my first hosted horror program, Shock It To Me, with Asmodeus as the host. And it was the first time I'd ever come across a horror host in my life. I was immediately completely hypnotized by it. I loved monster movies and stuff like that up to that point. About 1971, KTVU premiered Creature Features with Bob Wilkins. And unlike Asmodeus, who basically represented what I later understood to be the template of your classic horror host, Wilkins was really more a product of the strange amalgam of cultures that were hitting the Bay Area around that time. And he was closer in temperament to, say, a Bob Newhart, someone who had sort of a dry, whimsical sense of humor about him, but also somebody who clearly sort of represented the spirit of the Bay Area and its not counterculture. Bob was definitely not counterculture, but quirky. Mm-hmm. The sort of the quirky personality of the area. Now, as I was saying about Asmodeus, at that time he had the classic Universal horror package, and here are the movies like Bride of Frankenstein, and the genuine classics. Bob, on the other hand, his package opened with The Horror of Party Beach, the Del Tenney film, and rolled out the next week with Curse of the Living Corpse, Agent for Harm, Jesse James Meets Frankenstein's Daughter. He just had the grade Z movie package for him. But because of the way he presented them, the way he delivered them to the audience, they were endlessly fascinating. It was it's almost in a sort of pre-Mystery Science Theater way. The gentle smirk that he introduced these films with was just a real grabber, and these movies became much more fun than they had any right to be. And I think that for a period of time at least even sort of pulled me away from classic films and got me thinking about the really crazy offbeat elements of the film industry. And Bob supported that sort of perception with guests on his show, like local folks who built a robot or people who claimed to be from Mars. that type of thing. So it was a whole package. It was almost like a nightclub act in a way. What Bob was doing, and he was huge. The ratings for Creature Features were insane, and within a year he had knocked Asmodeus off the air. They were on at competing times, and Chemo just could not stand up against it. So
yeah,
that
now,
was
wasn't he also? Didn't he also? Like during his show, he would like read what the other stations had on at that point. At that point in time,
that was one of his classic bits. Yeah, he would pull out a TV guide. In fact, on his very first show in Sacramento in 1965, I think it was, he was screening Attack of the Mushroom People, and as he often said, he took the movie home. They gave him a 16mm print, which is what they were running at the station at the time. He took the movie home and watched it, and he just couldn't believe what he was seeing. He said, well, I've seen horror films prior to that, but I'd never seen anything like this. I didn't know how to explain it to an audience. And so he came on his very first show in Sacramento and pulled out a TV guide and said, well, here's what's on the other station. And Channel 5 has got this good Victor Mature movie. You might want to be watching that. And and apparently like the sponsors just went crazy, because here's some young kid telling people to change the channel. But again, it was Bob's delivery. He was able to sell something like that, and it garnered him a huge audience in Sacramento, and he brought that same act to San Francisco, and it was even bigger here.
Wow.
I mean, it's a larger market, but also I think it played really well for this area.
Yeah.
So Creature Features had a huge lasting influence on me. In my tastes in film. As I say, I developed an appreciation for eccentric films and was able to really kind of come to them on their own terms at some point, where you start to realize that there's something dazzlingly odd about Billy the Kid versus Dracula that you're not going to find somewhere else.
Sure.
So you can get something out of these films. And as the show evolved and Bob's popularity continued to grow, they eventually did get a better package of films. With Asmodeus off the air, they did pick up the Universal movies eventually, and also the Hammer films. At the same time, Bob didn't really change his act that much, except he had less to sneer about as far as the product went, but still the concept of monsters was something that he could play with. So, Creature Features had this consistency of tone throughout, despite whatever the film packages were.
Now, there are a couple of things that I just wanted to that I've read about the show, and you being the aficionado on Horror Hosts, is it true that Night of the Living Dead had its television premiere on Creature Features?
You know what? It's difficult really to nail this type of thing down completely, but there's every indication that KTVU Creature Features screened Night of the Living Dead uncut for the first time in the country.
Wow. And at that time too, I mean, I'm sorry to interrupt, but people don't now, especially younger listeners right now, they don't understand. Night of the Living Dead was highly controversial, and I mean, it was considered at that time extremely gory film. And by today's standards, it's certainly a lot different because we've gotten jaded over the years, especially with a lot of the violence that's even just on regular television shows. But I mean, to have that distinction is pretty amazing.
Yeah, when you look at Night of the Living Dead, as you say, it's difficult to appreciate it for its original effect sometimes. But if you stand back just a little bit and you see that sort of guerrilla filmmaking, that the energy, the documentary style of the thing was completely unlike anything that had been shown certainly on Creature Features or other monster movie kind of things, and it had a really huge effect. Now apparently, as the 70s wore on and people were becoming more concerned about the effect of violence on television, KTVU would go back and clip it. So they edited the film for later screenings, but the very first time they showed it was uncut.
Wow.
But they said every time that they re-aired it, they got huge ratings, and every time they cut it, they would get letters of complaint.
Now, did you ever find out when they originally aired it uncut? Was it because they wanted horror fans to see the film uncut, or were they just not aware of the violence in the film?
No, they were definitely aware. KTVU had a program director who was a huge film fan. In the pre-cable days, KTVU became known for showing uncut films, and that includes nudity and violence. They showed Walkabout in prime time. They aired that one time. Bob Shaw, who worked with Bob Wilkins for years, was telling me a story once where they aired Twins of Evil on Creature Features and uncut, and they basically the ratings have this sort of natural arc for late night television. You have this peak point, might go up just a little bit, but then it levels off and then drops off in the second half of whatever film you're showing. Twins of Evil, the numbers kept going up because here's this R-rated film filled with female nudity.
Yeah.
So people are calling their friends. And by the end of it, they had this huge rating.
Yeah, I bet.
And
I bet you I know the demographic too.
Yeah. And apparently, like the next day, the station manager was looking at the numbers and going, "Wow, this is fantastic! Look at these numbers. We should show this in prime time." And they said, "Well, you know what the film's about?"
Oh my
Oh,
gosh!
we can get a big audience during prime time. No, well, look, let me show you. This is what we showed. You go, "Oh my God, we showed that."
What? Wow. I mean, it's certainly a different time in television. It was sort of the bridge between, the early days of TV and the more, modern technological days of television. For those that, again, are listeners out there that are really young, that don't know what television was like before satellite, before cable, can you describe as a young boy growing up, and as you mentioned, having the 4 channels and then getting UHF, and what a big deal that was? Because in a way that was cable at that point, because you were able to get these other channels out there and see all these other things.
I think more significantly than just like a growing number of stations was locally produced television. That was really at the heart of it. And there's a mystique about local TV that it's just not going to be recreated. It is one of those sort of bygone era type of things. But your local stations would essentially be doing theater every day. They would have like at KTVU. This is a great example of this. They would have the four walls of the studio each had a different set.
Wow.
So they would, first thing in the morning, they'd have it pointed at the talk show set.
Mm-hmm.
And then Captain Satellite would come up, so they'd swing the camera around and they'd start doing Captain Satellite. And in the earliest days, even, this is all live. So even more so, like, you'd have a commercial break, they'd turn the camera around and a guy in a costume would walk in and introduce cartoons. And then they'd swing the camera back around again for an afternoon Dialing for Dollars movie. And the camera sat in the middle of the studio. At KTVU at least, and they just spun it around to catch all the different sets. But there was something so unique, however it was produced. There was something so unique about local TV, and part of it is just the immediacy of it. And I can talk specifically about Creature Features and just the sense of knowing where it was coming from.
Yeah.
Having, driving on the freeway by the studio, being able to point to it and say that's where they make Creature Features.
Mm-hmm.
So every night that you're sitting at home watching that program, whether it's Creature Features or it was Zachary in Philadelphia when he was still Roland, or Gallardi in Cleveland, or whatever, or your kid show hosts or anything, you knew that they were part of your community.
Yeah.
There's always an off chance that you could run into them at the supermarket shopping.
Yeah.
And in any event, they would make local appearances. So, oh my God, there's that person that you see on TV, and TV had a huge impact at the time. Prior to, these days, television is basically an entertainment delivery system.
Yeah.
It's a platform for programming.
Yeah, it's the conveyor belt.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it is. And God love them. There's still a lot of stuff on TV that I like, but you don't have that sort of handmade quality, and you don't have that sense of local hero, because it was local TV.
Mm-hmm.
And Bob Wilkins would tell stories often about just being out with his family at a restaurant, and people coming up and introducing themselves. And, the sort of the kind of mixed feelings that he had about celebrity. But for people who lived in the Bay Area, to see him on the street with his family or whatever was really a thrill, especially if you were a kid.
Yeah.
And that's something that you don't get anymore. What I kind of equate it to, in a way, is the difference between the Beatles on Ed Sullivan and American Idol.
Mm-hmm.
When the Beatles appeared on Ed Sullivan, a nation of children, or young people anyway, went out the next day, started bugging their parents to buy them musical instruments. They got together, they formed bands, they played music with their friends. These days, American Idol, you can't buy lasers, a studio band, big screen TVs.
Yeah.
The corporate production, they own element of the program.
Yeah.
And whereas something like a locally produced program, or even a nationally produced program like Ed Sullivan, it was just the simplicity of four guys standing up and playing music. You could do that.
Yeah. It was sort of like, I guess the only equation I could make for nowadays would be like going out and buying the video game. Was it Rock Group or?
Was it
Rockstar? I'm so
Guitar
out of it
Hero?
now. Guitar Hero.
Yeah.
And then they have the band version, and it's like, I guess that's about as close as you can get. But
Either that, or you could go out and get yourself a damn guitar.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, if you're going to learn, go out and learn it.
Yeah.
Well, the interesting thing, too, is that when you look at celebrity then versus celebrity now, obviously it's gone down to the lowest common denominator on so many levels. But if people want to find out what an impact a celebrity has, you look at where they were then and you look at where they are now. And again, Beatles, Paul McCartney, they're still where they were. They are those icons, and you're talking about, like, Muhammad Ali, people who influenced the world at a time when there was radio and basic television, no cable, no internet, no cell phones,
Right.
no texting, no video games, and that's the thing for me when we hear celebrity now. That's what kind of bugs me, because most of the celebrities now are famous for nothing. And,
Right.
And on top of that, as far as being influential.
Well, and that's the other big point. Beyond where they are now, it's where other people are now. In terms of Bob Wilkins locally, Bob Shaw is another good example, but not the only one. Bob Shaw was a fan when Bob Wilkins was in Sacramento, and started writing in letters. And Bob Wilkins would start to read them on the air. And then so Bob Shaw wrote more letters with information about the films. Oh, by the way, you said this was Boris Karloff's first film at Universal. It was actually his second, blah, 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 whatever. And Wilkins would read that information, eventually inviting Shaw down to the studio, and finally, inviting him on camera. And when he came to KTVU in San Francisco, he brought Shaw along with him as a producer.
Wow.
And eventually the people at KTVU said, hey, Bob Shaw, we're thinking of developing a new position, an entertainment reporter. Would you like to do that? Would you be interested in that? And Wilkins pushed him to do it. He said, look, I know you're a little nervous, but look, they're offering you, grab it. And so Shaw did. And the next thing he knows, he's got a 30-plus year career at KTVU as an entertainment reporter.
Wow.
And Bob did that for a number of people here in the Bay Area as well as Sacramento. He would basically, pull them. This is at a time when you could do this. Pull someone in off the street who had the passion for something and help them develop it, and then provide them an opportunity to excel at it. And because of that, a number of people here in the Bay Area began their careers in television. And beyond that, people who watched were inspired to go into other areas in film or television themselves. Great example are the people at Industrial Light and Magic. A lot of them were local boys. When Bob did a show in 1998 in Sacramento, some of the earliest people in line for that were guys from ILM, because they had grown up in the Bay Area with Bob, and they wanted to make sure that they got into that event. They were not going to get sold out. And when Bob came back for KTVU's 40th anniversary for an interview, Bob Shaw presented him with a letter from George Lucas thanking him for his years hosting creature features and how much it had influenced him as well. And in fact, Bob told this one story I loved where he was down in Los Angeles on a junket seeing, I think it was Raiders of the Lost Ark or something like this, and he noticed George Lucas there, and he walked up to him and goes, "Oh, Mr. Lucas, I just wanted to say, I saw Star Wars, and it was a very interesting picture, really enjoyed it." And George Lucas looks at me and goes, "I know who you are. You're Bob Wilkins."
Wow.
and Lucas was the kid.
Yeah.
He's just so excited to meet Bob.
Oh my gosh.
So that's the sort of influence that these kind of people can have at the grassroots, and that type of story is told over and over again across the country. It's not just unique to the San Francisco Bay Area. When I interviewed or participated in interviews with a number of these hosts across the country for the American Scary Film, and the stories that they tell from place to place have such a similarity that it generates this sense of Americana, that there's this sweeping story to this, but it's it's not a huge story, but it's one retold from place to place, and that it's sort of a regional snowball, basically. And it just happens over and over again, you know, how these people stumbled into hosting, and the effect that they had on their local community, how much their local communities mean to them. Big Chuck Shadowski in Cleveland, Ohio, had worked with Ghilardi back in the early 60s. He was the director on the Ghilardi show. He was lifelong friends with Ernie Anderson. And when we interviewed him, he was approaching his 40th year in broadcasting, not just in broadcasting, but on that show. When Ghilardi left town, Big Chuck took over along with a co-host, Houlihan, and eventually Houlihan left and he went on with Little John. But in that same time slot, Fridays at 11:30, Big Chuck Shadowski was on the air for over 40 years eventually in that spot. And even at the end of it, after 40 years of doing that show every week, he still talked about local TV and the sense of community with a genuine passion. It was something that clearly still motivated him and energized him. You know, and having the interaction with an audience. They had a live in studio audience for the Big Chuck and Little John shows all the way through their run.
Getting back to Bob, you're certainly getting him on the American Scary documentary. How important that was, considering that he passed away just a few years after that. How I'm assuming it was pretty easy, probably getting him to do the film, because he sounds like he was certainly a man who, you know, was definitely willing to talk about it.
Unfortunately, by the time that we were able to, by the time the film was being made, actually, Bob was already suffering from Alzheimer's, and his memory was very faulty at that point. But happily, we did the interview at an event that was celebrating Bob, and Bob Shaw was there, and he was someone that Wilkins was very comfortable with as a friend. And while we were asking questions, most of the stuff Bob could not remember, but Bob Shaw was able to prompt him on, saying, well, Bob, we did this, this, and this. And so, you know, Wilkins, he would take that in, and then he would turn it into an answer for us. So he was actually at that point being fed a lot of this information, but as you say, it just meant so much to have him be the one on camera saying it. After, you know, he'd meant so much to people for so long, and you know, in a way, he's a nationally recognized star for a variety of reasons. A nationally recognized host. Some of that, you know, most of it was just his personality and quirky nature, but also I think some of it was just the timing. You know, being from that period of the early 70s. Bob would interview people who were coming through town to promote their films, and so a lot of vintage interview material exists, courtesy of Bob, with people like, you know, Forrest J. Ackerman and the Star Trek actors, and Christopher Lee and many other people, and so you know, I think some of his reputation in other areas of the country, at least, is built on that. I mean, there's some stunning interviews that came out of the Creature Feature show.
You know, Michael, this is such a great conversation, and it's not going to fit into one show. So what I'd like to do is, I'd like to do something that's never been done here in the Graveyard. I want to invite you back for next week's show.
Oh, absolutely.
And we can discuss, because there's so much more that I want to get into. I want to get into more about yourself, Dr. Goulfinger, the Cleveland scene, all kinds of stuff. So why don't you sit tight, and we'll pick this conversation up next week. How's that?
Sounds marvelous. Yeah, I still got plenty of oxygen.
I want to get into. Well, last week we talked about how horror hosts are an important part of the American culture. But right now we were just talking about off air how it's something that may be lost. Why don't you start? Why don't you pick up that conversation?
Sure. Well, basically, as you know, as we were discussing, trends have changed so much. I think a lot of the culture of today is based in the moment. There's an immediacy to everything through music, television, etc. There seems to be a lack of nostalgia. Let's put it that way. And people of a certain age, myself being one of them,
me being two of them.
Yeah, we're sometimes concerned that all of this will be lost, that we may be the last generation who's interested in this type of thing, and that goes beyond horror hosts or horror movies even. But there is a generation of younger viewers out there who will refuse to watch anything in black and white. They will not, and that's really disheartening to see. But that said, although that's clearly where the wave of the culture is going, there's still pockets of interest among younger people that are sometimes unexpected and always certainly happy. I know some people who have kids themselves, or they know people who have kids who are genuinely interested in classic monster movies. They want to see the Wolfman, and once they see them, they're fascinated. They love them. These things still hold that sort of power. It's just most people, it's just not their focus. And I don't know if the culture is just that much more diffuse or what, but it is always inspiring to see someone younger have that kind of enthusiasm.
Yeah.
And I still think that the horror host is a great way to plug into that, because the horror host does appeal to this younger age group, as well as appealing, the nostalgia factor appeals to older people. But the horror host has this sort of quality of almost like the kid show host at midnight.
Yeah.
And that same sort of goofy appeal that I think can still connect with a younger audience if you catch them at the right time. I had a friend, in fact, and I thought this was a great story, who has a really young child who loves silent movies. And it was just the most unexpected thing to hear in conversation. But the way he put it was, I would sit down with the kid, we'd turn on a silent movie, and I would read the intertitles to them. And it hit me like, oh my gosh, it's a storybook.
Yep.
For a kid who doesn't know better, who doesn't know that they shouldn't be interested in a black and white movie, here's Dad sitting down with you, and you're watching the story, and then Dad reads a little bit to you, and then the story continues. So it's something that, it's obvious that a kid would find that sort of thing appealing if they're open to it.
And that's the thing, they have to be open to it. And I think, too, it also goes back to parents. And, if parents don't expose their children to these things at a young age, then they're not going to be interested at all. Because obviously, as they get older, they're going to find things that they like. And then it is hard to introduce them to, oh, by the way, there's this, German horror movie. Oh, it's a silent film. And they're like, well, wait a minute, or here's an American movie that's a silent movie. And the unfortunate part about it is you're going to have someone like Lon Chaney, who was such an amazing actor, that those films and those performances are going to be lost the less.
Right. Well, they're going to become academic.
Yeah.
They already sort of are.
Yeah.
But I think without putting too much of a golden glow on it or something, I do feel as though we were lucky in the 60s and the 70s with television being a hodgepodge, a potpourri of programming. These days, everything is slotted.
Mm-hmm.
You want to watch cartoons, you go to Cartoon Network. You want to watch documentaries, you go to the Documentary Network. You want to watch classic movies, you go to the Classic Movie Network. In the old days, you would have a kid show, and that would be followed by a sports program, followed by a locally produced news program, followed by a movie, and that movie was either from 2 years ago or it was Casablanca.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're a kid and you're curious but bored, you'd end up sitting through things that you otherwise would never in a million years actively go to the television to watch. I watched Wide World of Sports and The Galloping Gourmet.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I never sat down and circled that in my TV guide.
Yeah. I mean, I remember when public access or PBS would show. I remember when PBS would show Monty Python.
Right.
And Doctor Who. And at that time too, it's like, wow, these shows from England.
Well, see, this is the thing. There's always a potential for discovery.
Yeah.
And you don't have that when you only choose to see exactly what you want to see. And the other interesting thing about that sort of hodgepodge was suddenly seeing connections or finding connections that you wouldn't have if you only watched one type of programming.
Mm-hmm.
Just as a reel, for instance, I've got a copy of a Milton the Monster show with original commercials in it.
Wow.
And one of the commercials is for a David Brinkley round table discussion with a bunch of senators and crap.
Wow.
And you're going from Milton blowing smoke out of the top of his head to this very adult program.
Yep.
And it's not so much the adult world invading the child's world, but from my perspective, it was the child suddenly seeing, having seeing the possibilities of adulthood.
Yep.
Seeing the doorway was opening the other way. It was something for you to reach for. And so that was always really exciting. And you did discover things that end up being in some cases, lifelong loves and passions that you, again, wouldn't seek out on your own. So I do think people kind of rob themselves of that potential for surprise. And that's a pity.
Speaking of lifelong loves, you have been a part of the horror genre now for a while, and your expertise. I mean, when you have documentary filmmakers coming after you to help produce their film, I mean, that says a lot. So was the horror genre something that you knew that you would be a part of? Was it something that you wanted to be a part of, or was it something that was a love and a hobby that suddenly you were able to turn into a profession?
Well, I can tell you specifically what happened here. Back around 1997 or 98, Bob Wilkins released some tapes of his old show that had been given to him by the studio recently at that point. And he put those out, and I ordered up a set. And it's like 10 hours worth of just nonstop, wall-to-wall, mind-blowing nostalgia.
Mm-hmm.
And it got me so cranked up just watching that stuff again that I realized that I'd always had a passion for this. Wilkins was definitely the big doorway in. But following the popularity of creature features in the Bay Area, they began to syndicate hosts from other areas of the country on the Kaiser station. So in 1973, we were getting the syndicated version of The Ghoul, who was from Cleveland. And then later on, Son of Svengoolie from Chicago in the mid-'80s. So I had seen other hosts. And then we also had a few other homegrown versions as well, including The Glob which was a rubber mask that some guy wiggled from below.
Yeah.
No, swear to God.
I would have loved to have been in the room for that one. Hey, I have this idea. We're gonna have this. It's gonna be like a thing of Jell-O.
Yeah. Well, it was a sci-fi double bill, and the glob claimed to be a Martian who was softening up the planet Earth by terrifying them with movies, and then they were going to invade. So it was high concept for a wiggly rubber mask, let me tell you. But anyway, yeah. But when I saw this Wilkins material again, I was suddenly possessed with this interest to see what other things were happening in other areas of the country. I suddenly remembered, wait, there was this school guy, there was this other thing. And I'd been trading tapes with people just in general, collecting films and whatnot.
You are dating yourself by saying trading tapes, you know.
I know.
Kids don't do that anymore. They exchange files and they email.
And so I just started putting the word out. Hey, have you got anything with a horror host on it, with a local TV horror host? I'm really interested in seeing what that's about. And people started to deliver immediately. I suddenly getting things. Sammy Terry from Indianapolis, and clips of other hosts like Sir Graves Ghastly and things like that all started coming in. And over the years, I eventually collected. I'm now up to about, it's just over 1,500 DVDs now that I've got of various either complete shows or clip collections of hosts from across the country.
Is that all?
Yeah, that's it.
That's it? That's not impressive, Michael. I mean, I brought you on this show to impress us. You're not impressing us.
Well, and the thing was, it was so wonderful. Going back to an earlier topic in a way that we're talking about, was seeing how alike these different programs were, yet how specific they were to their region. They each had a really distinctive flavor, and you knew the community that they were talking to. But at the same time, there was clearly that template, this sort of comfortable sameness to them. You could drop in anywhere, and you knew exactly what you were looking at, even if the ingredients were shaken up a little bit. And it sounds really just found these fascinating, colorful characters. And then once I started to delve into the background a little bit, when they were on, and what was happening around them, what their careers were outside of hosting, or what was happening to them while they were hosting, my interest in it just grew and grew. A lot of them talked about their local community, especially in Cleveland. They, the guys from Cleveland they were all about being from Cleveland. Mm-hmm. And eventually, I started getting shows there that were still on the air in 1999, and I was getting they had the Ghoul back on the air, Ron Sweet, Big Chuck and Little John, and the Son of Ghoul were all on the air there. And I started kind of a long-distance fanboy operation with these guys, because this is local television. This is what I grew up with, and they were still doing it. And that was just so exciting to me. I started writing letters and sending things in and whatnot. And eventually, the Son of Ghoul was having a contest giving away a life-size skeleton. And he announced it on the show. Hey, we're going to give away this model skeleton, and it's going to be a mail-in contest. You can mail in as many postcards as you want. So I wanted to mail in 200 postcards.
Oh my gosh!
Which is what I eventually did. Wow. I just kept dropping him there. Just like, this is way too cool. As soon as he said the winner gets to come onto the show to pick up their prize. Yep. That was it. I just started writing, stamping, mailing.
Oh my gosh.
And I won.
Surprise.
And by that point, I'd been making friends with a bunch of folks in Cleveland. There was a big convention coming up, a horror convention coming up there. All the stars were aligned, and I just said, well, that's it. We are flying out to Cleveland to visit my friends and pick up my skeleton on TV. So my ridiculously indulgent wife came along with me. We flew out to the Son of Ghoul show and collected the prize on the air.
Wow.
And Son of Ghoul, Kevin Scarpino, and I have been friends ever since now. And
That's great.
I travel back to Cleveland once or twice a year, depending on what's going on out there and what I'm doing, if I have something to promote. And so it's always great. And at this point, it's just great to go back and visit friends. But now I think he is the last show that's still on the air. Since I started traveling back there, the Ghoul show went off the air in 2004, and the Big Chuck show finally went off the air in 2007. But one time when I was out there, I did manage the hat trick of being on each of those programs while I was in town.
Wow.
And the Ghoul was especially exciting because I was a fan as a kid back in '73, and to finally meet him and to be on his program was really an honor.
It's a big deal, yeah. I bet. Now, one of your quotes that I pulled, I loved it so much. You said calling Ghoulardi a horror host is like calling the Beatles musicians.
Yeah. I don't think people really understand the impact that he had when he burst on the scene out there. And I think my own theory is that there was a level of hysteria that was already being seeded in Cleveland. The fact that the Beatles and Ghoulardi were both hitting that area around the same time, I think in some ways fed off of each other. That this youthful energy was exploding already. But Ghoulardi was huge out there. Big Chuck says that at one public appearance that Ernie Anderson, Ghoulardi, did, they pulled 10,000 people, and they had to close off the streets, and it was at this big stadium, and it was packed.
Wow.
And the program was so popular, in fact, that the crime rate would go down on Friday nights by, I think, 25%.
Wow.
And the police actually wanted Ghoulardi on the air every night.
Yeah, I bet they did.
Yeah, and he was a cultural phenomenon out there. In fact, he was only on the air for like 3.5 years, 1962, and he left town in '66. But he's so well regarded and so well remembered that even today there's an annual Ghoulardi Fest convention out in Cleveland, hosted by Big Chuck and Little John, and they bring in some of the other local TV hosts who are still in the area.
Wow.
And there was a Ghoulardi's Bar and Grill out there for about 10 years that I think closed down about 2006.
When you look at horror hosts, would you put him as number one?
You know what? It's always difficult to rank these people because everyone's influence is different. And but I have to say that in my own view, there's this sort of triumvirate of horror host royalty, and Zachary is the king, Vampira is the queen, and Ghoulardi was the jester. Who is often the most powerful person in the court. But those are the three classic hosts, and they're each distinctively different, but they all represent a different aspect of everything that followed them. And of course, people were playing variations of these things even back then. Interestingly enough, though, these hosts didn't really know about each other. And when you're talking about hosts, especially in the first cycle of the Shock package back in 1958, 57, 58, when that was on the air, and these hosts sprang up all over the country, you can see similarities between them, even though they didn't know about each other.
Why do you think that was?
Well, I think there were a couple of things going on. There was already some previous history that fed into it with radio and comic books and things like that. But then there were also the films themselves that people would pull a ghoulish look from, or a mad scientist was a mad scientist, that type of thing. So those elements were already sort of there for the plucking. But I also think another aspect of it was the spook shows, which did travel around the country. So even if these people didn't know each other in another market, they might have seen a spook show come through town. And basically the spook show was a Grand Guignol style magic act with like guillotines and ghosts and all kinds of spooky stuff. Monsters on stage, monsters running into the audience, and at the end of the stage act they would show a monster movie, generally not a very good one, like a monogram, like Bela Lugosi and the Ape Man or something like that. But that, I think, in a weird way, also helped create the template for the later television horror host. And of course, there are other hosts, other types of hosted programs already that they could also take from. So it wasn't completely alien territory, but you just put a monstrous sort of person in the middle of it, and put a little spin on that.
Yeah, interesting. Well, we talked a lot about the horror host. Let's talk about you and Dr. Goulfinger.
Yeah.
So, why don't you tell everybody who don't know who Dr. Goulfinger is? Who is he?
Well, back in 2001, I finally decided to make the jump and begin producing my own show on local cable access. It was, pretty much the peak of my passion for this thing as the ball really started to get rolling, and I just thought, oh man, I gotta, my life will not be complete unless I do this myself. Back in grade school, my friends and I had made an 8mm movie where we did our own parody of the Ghoul Show back in the 70s, and I got to play the Ghoul character.
Okay.
And we even had like a Froggy, the magic gremlin toy, and all this other stuff. So that was actually my earliest experience horror hosting. But with Dr. Goulfinger, I decided to go for something a trifle more sophisticated. And it was just basically an excuse to have fun myself, to play around with all this stuff that I loved. Built a set in my house.
Wow.
And produced about 13 shows total. And part of it was just doing the hosting and having the fun that way, but also used it as an opportunity to educate people about other horror hosts. And I'd have a segment on Seymour from Los Angeles, or Dr. Paul Bearer or something like that, and I would bring that into the show. Eventually, I just got to be a little bit too much to produce myself, and I was still doing a number of live appearances here in the area, which were always a lot of fun. And whenever I went back to Cleveland, Son of Ghoul would have me on his show, with the upshot being that I was continually getting mail from Cleveland, from Ohio, but never anything locally. But eventually, at some point, I just said, I'm getting a little tired of producing these shows. But I kept Dr. Goulfinger around as a character, almost like an ambassador for horror hosts. It was a great way to be able to step up and talk about this history. People, for some strange reason, will listen to a guy in a goofy costume. I don't know what it is. But just last year, I was out at Dr. Goulfinger was out at the Gallardi Fest doing some onstage interviews with Big Chuck and Little John, and with the Son of Ghoul, and also another host they had out there, Drac, Frank and Drac, and it was it was great to be able to have that opportunity to sit down and walk these guys through their vast history out there. It was just terrific.
How did you get involved in American Scary?
Well, what had happened there was Sandy Clark had been in a convention here in San Francisco, and Bob Wilkins was in attendance, and he saw this big line of people around his table. He just thought, well, what's going on over here? There was a line going out the door, and someone working with Bob there said, explain the situation to him. This is Bob Wilkins. He had the show and blah, blah, blah. Sandy and his friend John had been looking for a subject for a film. They had made a number of shorts together and were interested in expanding, doing some type of feature or a documentary of some kind. And this suddenly seemed like a really great topic to him. And so Sandy continued to talk with this guy working with Bob, and he said to Sandy, well, look, if you want to know about horror hosts, you really should talk to Michael Monahan. And he gave him my contact information. And Sandy came over to the house, and I pulled out some of these props and photographs and flyers and postcards and whatnot, and just basically walked him through the whole history, beginning with Vampira on up to the present, with people who are doing cable access and internet shows now. And he said, well, at the beginning of this, I wasn't sure if we had enough for a short, but this has got to be a feature. And at that point, he invited me on to help them out with the film. And we began to compile a list of the people he had to get for the film. And so I made a number of recommendations there, and I helped him structure a lot of the questions. He had in mind, he and John already had in mind a basic format that they wanted to use, the areas that they wanted to cover, how they wanted to frame this. But I was able to give them a lot of specific detail on the individual hosts that they could pull other information out with. And so it was a really exciting collaboration, because for them, they were launching into a feature, which was exactly what they wanted to do, and they were really excited about that. And I was getting an opportunity to meet all these people that I'd watching and reading about for years, and so that was a big thrill for me. So there's a lot of energy that went into this. And then any place we went that we started talking about the film, almost to a person, all of the locals would start saying, I used to watch so-and-so when I was a kid. And, so we were making friends across the country just based on, the fact that we were doing something about horror hosts. Mm-hmm. So it was just really exciting all around, and a great opportunity.
Before I let you go, one of your favorite films is Frankenstein versus the Wolfman.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, I think...
And I don't say that as accusatory. I'm just curious, because I think that's one of the lost, Universal classics, and certainly the one and only time Bela Lugosi played Frankenstein.
Right.
Which, of course, I immediately start thinking about Ed Wood and Lugosi losing his mind when Boris Karloff's name is mentioned. What is it about the Frankenstein versus the Wolfman that...
Well, I can tell you very, very specifically that when it was either 5 or 6 years old, but definitely either 5 or 6. It was Halloween. I was out trick-or-treating with my brothers, and this was back in the day where you could take a shopping bag, and it would be filled with candy by the end of the night. Now, we had the added benefit of living next to an apartment complex. So on Halloween, we would go out to the apartment complex first, and we just got filled up, and we were coming back across the street, and my bag broke. So my brothers thoughtfully went on ahead, saying, catch up with us.
Yeah.
I went back to the house to get a new bag. And so here I am in my little Fred Flintstone costume. Walk through the front door, and my dad's lying on the couch saying, "Hey, what's up, sport?" I said, "Oh, my bag broke. I'm getting a new bag." And I walk through the room, and he's watching Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman. And as I walk through the room, it's just at the point where you see the two monsters on the slab at the castle at the end, and I'm going, wow. And go in and I get my bag and come back out, and suddenly the electricity's flying everywhere, and I see that great close-up of Bela Lugosi with that evil smile on his face as he starts to wake up, and then snapping the bonds, and the monsters start fighting, and I'm just, you know.
Yeah, that's it. It's go time.
Yeah. And that just impressed itself on my mind ever since, and you know, that is one of the most vivid childhood memories that I have. And every Halloween I pull out Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman and watch it pretty much like in honor of my father. Really.
Wow.
But that's why that movie grabs me. But then in a larger sense, you know, you look back at the Karloff Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein and Son of Frankenstein, and these are clearly superior films. But on its own terms, Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman pretty much says everything you need to know about post-40s horror movies. You know, there's still a sense of style about them, even though they're B films. There's a genuine sense of style about them. And Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman also does have this, you know, a shadowy mood, and it's well paced. It actually brings the monsters together fairly cleverly, and then it's got that bang up finish. What more can you ask for?
Yeah, that fight at the end, and when the water comes flying through the castle, I mean, and it's right when the Wolfman leaps. I mean, this is you know, before, you know, visual effects, everybody.
No, yeah, these people knew how to make movies.
Yeah,
people forget.
Yeah, and it's true when you're saying, you know, the production value, the quality, the sets, the models, the costumes.
And the music. Let's not forget the music.
Yeah.
I remember again pretty vividly seeing Ghost of Frankenstein for the first time.
When Bela Lugosi's
on
playing, and he's playing
Igor.
Yeah.
And years later, when I heard that Hans Salter music again, I just went, whoa!
Yeah.
You know, that I remembered even as a youngster. I remember that music as much as I remember anything visual about that.
Isn't that what Mel Brooks used in Young Frankenstein, right? Isn't that the theme that he kind of used with the violin? Or was that right?
Well, he played off of that a little bit. It wasn't the shepherd's theme, the horn that Igor was playing.
And
but
actually,
not that big,
not the orchestra,
stuff.
And I'm trying to remember, was Ghost was the one with the again? Wasn't that with the police officer with the arm, right? Was that?
No, that was
in.
That was Son of Frankenstein.
That was in Son. Yes, that's right.
Yeah. Now this is the one with the immediate sequel to Son of Frankenstein.
Yes.
Lugosi plays Igor again, and it ends with Igor's brain being put into the body of the monster.
Yes.
And you have that really disturbing, surreal image there at the end of Lon Chaney Jr.'s Frankenstein monster suddenly speaking with Igor's voice.
Gosh.
Yeah, that's a good, at least kiddie level freak out.
Yeah, it is. And again, it just goes to show you the kind of memories, because I know nowadays with horror, it's about, well, it's not always about, but a lot of the films that are out now are over the top, bloody, gory, violent. But when you look at, again, going back to the foundation of the genre, you see films like that. And, you know, the last 3 weeks now on my show, I've been talking about a lot of the older classic films, black and white films, where it's getting me to the point now where I'm going to have to start popping them in the DVD player and watching them, because it's been a long time since I've seen a lot of these films.
Well,
just wonderful movies.
You can't. with rare exceptions, you can't use a word like evocative in a modern horror film.
Yeah.
The older films are really, these, today it's body counts. Back then it's fairy tales.
Yeah.
And these are all dark fairy tales, very Brothers Grimm. I think probably one of the lone directors who actually kind of balances both, who kind of has a foot in both worlds, is Del Toro.
Yes, Guillermo
Labyrinth. Guillermo del Toro.
Yeah.
And he can do something. Like in the Hellboy films, you've got that real monster rally kind of quality about them. But in something like Pan's Labyrinth, that to me, that reminds me of like an old Universal classic, just in terms of tone and mood.
Yeah.
The elements of fantasy, and rather than just bone-crunching horror.
Michael, if they want to learn more about you and Dr. Goulfinger, where can they go online?
Well, you can go to americanscary.com and get information about the film, or go to drgoulfinger.com, and Goulfinger is spelled without an H. H's are for the weak, and doctor is spelled with a K, like God intended.
Michael, this has been amazing, and you are the first guest to have an immediate repeat appearance. So you've set a graveyard show record without even trying to. You see the power of the internet.
Yeah. Set a new goal for blathering.
It's been great having you on the show. I definitely want to have you back again down the road. There's so much that I want to talk with you about. It's been great having you on these two shows. Thank you very much for joining me on the Graveyard Show.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it, and as you can tell, I can probably tell I love talking about this subject, and I'm hoping at this point to I'm pulling my research materials together. I'm hoping to get it all down on paper now and write a book about the history of horror hosts.
That would be amazing, and I know that my listeners would love to read that book. I know I can't wait for that book to come out.
Well, hopefully it's something we can talk about later.
Fantastic. He's Michael Monahan, Dr. Goulfinger. Go to his websites, watch American Scary, and support your horror hosts.
Yeah, support your local hosts.
Okay, well, welcome back. It was always great having Michael on the program, and he certainly is just a chock full of information when it comes to horror hosts. Well, we'll be hearing more from Michael on my next episode, which is actually the third time he appeared on the program. And we're going to be talking about Vampira on that one, so stay tuned for that. All right, before I start closing up the graveyard, let's talk a little horror. Well, last episode, which was a while ago, I talked about Joe Bob Briggs' last show of the season on Shudder, and I was saying how I would hope that they would re-sign him to another year, and how fans would just lose their minds if they didn't bring him back. Well, no sooner did I record that and upload it, word already came out before I even uploaded the show that Shudder did re-sign Joe Bob to another season of Last Drive-In. So literally, my show was outdated before I could upload it into the world of the internet. Oh well. Hey, got some great news out of it, and I think everyone is absolutely thrilled that Joe Bob will be returning for at least one more year. I think he's going to be going on for a while there, and if Shudder's smart, they will make sure that he stays there. It's got to be his decision to leave. It can't be theirs. And this again proves how Shudder just keeps improving more and more as time goes by. I know some of you out there have had criticisms of the app, and what I will say to that is just remember what horror was like online before Shudder existed. They just keep killing it. They do great work. Also, if you're not subscribing to Shudder, but you do want to get their Tuesday emails with horror news on it, you can go on there, you can sign up for that, and they will send it to you as well. It's definitely worth it. It comes out Tuesday late afternoon, early evening, and it's great. They have some great stuff about horror in general, and then they have news on the site as well. All right, well, speaking of home video, I don't know how many of you heard about Peter Jackson's box set that'll be coming out. It's going to be the first 4 films that he did. They're going to be coming out in 4K, and it's going to be the restored versions of Bad Taste, Dead Alive, Meet the Feebles, and Heavenly Creatures. And it looks like they're going to have a bunch of extras, and they will be remixed in 5.1 surround as well. As well as the big news, at least for me, the gigantic news, is the Criterion Collection announced that Spine number 1000, the 1000th release from Criterion, is going to be the one and only Godzilla, the Showa era films box set. The first 15 films of the Godzilla series from 1954 to 1975. And if you're like me and you're a Godzilla fan, you basically couldn't get your credit card out or your PayPal out fast enough to buy this thing. It is going to be incredible. So basically, the films that are going to be in this is the original Gojira, of course, and then the U.S. version, Godzilla King of the Monsters, the Americanized version of that film with Raymond Burr, Godzilla Raids Again, King Kong versus Godzilla, both the U.S. and the Japanese cuts are both going to be released in that. Mothra versus Godzilla, Ghidorah, the three-headed monster, Invasion of Astro Monster, Ibera, I think I'm saying that right, Ibera, Horror of the Deep, Son of Godzilla, and of course the classic Destroy All Monsters Attack, Godzilla versus Hedorah, or otherwise known as Godzilla versus the Smog Monster, one of my favorites. Godzilla versus Gigan, Godzilla versus Megalon, Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, a classic, and the sequel, Terror of Mechagodzilla. Those are your 15 films, and if you haven't seen the box set, what it's going to look like, it looks fantastic. So you can go to Criterion.com to take a look at the box set, what it looks like, and get all the information you want on all the extras and all kinds of stuff that's going on with this box set. And depending on where you buy your Blu-rays, the price I've seen so far has ranged from about $179 to $279 US for the set. So there you have it. So the king of all monsters is truly going to be king of Criterion as well. As I mentioned at the top, there's this crazy lawsuit going on with Friday the 13th. Now, for some of you, this may be old news. For others, this may be the first time you're hearing about it. Recently, I had heard about this and decided to read up on it. So, this Friday the 13th lawsuit is just crazy. So there looks like there's this battle about the rights to the film and the character of Jason. So on the one side, you have producer-director Sean Cunningham and Horror Inc., and on the other side, you have screenwriter Victor Miller. So it looks like a judge declared Victor Miller the sole owner to the original Friday the 13th screenplay. But the judge wouldn't rule on who owned the rights to the character of adult Jason. Now, of course, his first appearance was in part 2, and then you have the iconic hockey mask Jason, which would appear in part 3. So now you have Sean Cunningham and Horror Inc. Asking the Second Circuit Court to reverse the decision because Victor Miller had done what they call work for hire, and he should not have been awarded the rights to the screenplay in the first place. So, needless to say, it's completely stalled the series since nothing can be made during the legal battle. And apparently, at one point, the parties tried to have a mediation but no settlement was reached. So now I have to say the obvious. No final girl was able to destroy Jason, but now it looks like the legal system certainly will. So hopefully this can be straightened up and finalized soon, because, yeah, no Friday the 13th movies are being done while this is happening. So there you go. Hopefully, again. Now, of course, there is Halloween, but I'm going to hold off on talking about the Halloween series until the end of next podcast. So stay tuned for that. Meanwhile, the Graveyard Show podcast can now be found just everywhere. YouTube, iTunes, Anchor, Podomatic, Google, Breaker, Pocket Casts, CastBox, Stitcher, Radio Public, just a whole bunch of places. You can also reach me at gyspodcast@gmail.com. That's G as in grave, Y as in yard, S as in show, podcast@gmail.com. gyspodcast@gmail.com. As always, you can leave comments on the appropriate sites as well. I always look forward to hearing from you. All right, that's going to do it for me as we head back outside into my windy graveyard. Although the wind does feel kind of great considering how hot it's just been these last couple of weeks. Anyway, it was great having you visit again, and if you know of any horror fans, please send them this way. New visitors are always welcome. And as you exit the graveyard, I would like to remind you to please lock the gate behind you. We wouldn't want anyone to get out. Until next time.